So of MC Fireside Chats, my name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks and Modern Campground. Excited to be here. Did the intro video stutter for you guys again? I'm just going to ask that live in front of everybody. I don't know why that's happening. They changed their new studio, and maybe I have to recut it in a new format. But anyway, I thought it was my computer. So welcome, everybody. So we are in our, what week is it? The third week of the March already? Second week of March? I don't know, something like that. I heard Stacy doesn't even know what time zone she was in. I was listening, so I'm not going to ask Stacy for that. But welcome everybody to another show. As usual, we'll briefly go around and just introduce ourselves. We got our recurring guests, Robert, Mike, and Jeff on here, and then Stacy is our special guest. Who wants to start? You guys pick.
Ladies first.
Yeah, I'm the outsider looking in. So I'm Stacy DM, CEO and co-founder of Set Your Sights camping technology company based in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Thanks for being here, Stacy. Appreciate it. Robert, you want to go?
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. Robert Preston, CEO of Unhitched RV.
Mr. Jeff Hoffman.
I'm Jeff Hoffman, founder of Camp Strategy.
That's it?
Yeah, well,
Like
consulting
amazing
firm.
tagline or anything like that? All right.
Not today.
You need a tagline for Camp Strategy. Mike Harrison.
Mike Harrison, COO of CRR Hospitality.
All right, gentlemen, for all our recurring guests and lady for our special guest. Typically, we open up the show by saying, to our recurring guests, Robert, Mike, Jeff, is there anything that you guys have seen come across your desk in the last month as the world continues changing that you feel we should be talking about?
I know you were going to ask that, Brian. So the one easy topic I've got queued up for us, I think it's pretty simple. Fuel prices, right? And fuel prices, all the ramifications of what that means and what it doesn't mean going in here. I took the family on an RV trip about 2 weeks ago. We went to Houston, visited a couple of properties there, and I bought fuel on the way there for I think $3.30, and then the way home it was $5 a gallon. And, at 6 miles a gallon, that starts to really change the cost of a trip. So I think it's interesting. I haven't actually seen any change in our bookings or reservations or revenue yet, but it's always something to be thinking about that we're,
Yeah, I think this needs to be on the table. It was on my list of things to talk about, just maybe briefly, not to take over the whole show with it, right? But I saw also the producer price index came out this morning in the stock market and showed the price of vegetables was up 50% from what producers are charging grocery stores. And I think that's a lagging report. So I think it's going to impact a lot of pricing, and I'm curious to think what you guys feel like how will it, I don't want to talk about occupancy because nobody really knows and understands how that's going to may or may not impact if the war could be over by then, et cetera, et cetera. But how are you guys adjusting, planning, preparing, creating a what if scenario at your parks, if at all?
I don't know that fuel prices impact us that much, meaning I think what we've seen and what we've heard with all of the research, and whether it's Scott from Cairn or the other, is that the trips have become shorter anyway, right? Driving distance trips over the last few years, maybe the average trip was 800, now it's 500. The outdoor hospitality industry is generally more insulated. And then when fuel prices, change, people pivot from hotels to, outdoor hospitality. So, it may not necessarily be a bane, it may be a boon. Hard to tell right now. And same thing with, some of the other CPI and cost indexes. Generally, that's what the research says. And, what our industry has seen is when times get tough, they cut out vacations and, hotels, and they try and be a little bit more economical, which benefits the outdoor hospitality industry. And the studies have already shown that, the research shows that there's fewer trips, in the past already. And so I don't know that this, for us anyway, it doesn't change the strategies that we're already looking at, which is we know transient is down in general. We know that there's a glut of new supply in general. So we're still hunting for transient, but really pivoting more, to insulate with additional long-term, which really this doesn't affect whatsoever. I think in general, it's not a big uh-oh moment for us. I think, stay the course. Some of the seasonal properties that are about, to open up, maybe. But again, transient's already been affected. So I don't think it will really impact us too much.
I'm with you on gas prices, which is why I threw out the vegetables and everything else that's going to go up short term too, right? Which is what, like, the compacting thing is what worries me, but you're 100% right on long term. I think most of us were expecting transient. I'm just curious more about strategy. Like, is there a backup plan? Is there a coupon discount program? Is there anything that we should be preparing for in case?
Well, yeah, my thing would be that how is it going to affect the campground's ongoing expenses if we start having inflation again? Because electric obviously needs power, and they're probably going to go in for increases on power if that happens. What kind of supplies do we use are going to be raised up? Is it going to affect synthetics? Is it going to, what all is it going to affect on our cost side? Not only our revenue side, but also where are we getting hit on our cost side? Because that we can control to a point, but we can't control every expense that's coming through.
Well, yeah, that's the underreported. Is the aluminum prices also go through? Aluminum goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Petrochemicals go through the Strait of Hormuz. Like, lots of that stuff is being impacted. It's not just oil.
Yep. Well, and the effects of oil have only added, I think, to the issues that we were facing of uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So we've added another layer on top of the uncertainty we had. So as far as predicting the future right now.
No, nobody can predict the future. That's why I'm asking more about strategy, right? Like, do we have a what if scenario? Because nobody's going to be able to predict that. As Robert said, his bookings are flat. I imagine most people's bookings have not changed at all as a result of this, whatever's happening, right? We won't know that until mid-May, June.
Right. Yeah, I think keeping pace with what we were doing, it hasn't affected it that way, but it depends on how long it goes on.
Robert, you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I totally agree with everyone saying. It's an interesting thing, is usually when unfortunate things happen in the world or the economy, like Mike said, is generally beneficial to our industry. So we're, certainly not rooting for anything like that, like another COVID or something like that to happen. But we've already made, like Mike, right? We've already made that strategy shift many years ago for the long-term guest instead of the short-term guest. So the pivot is, well, the short-term guest, then you just market to people that are closer to your parks. And, for us, that was already a fundamental decision to invest and buy in the locations we're in, because there's a lot of people very close to our parks. Vice a, amazing location in a national park somewhere that doesn't have a population density around it, then that becomes challenging. If that's, your entire relying on someone traveling 600, 700, 800 miles, it does become a factor, the fuel prices. But for the most part, all of our parks, there's a large demographic of people that are less than 50 to 100 miles away. And so the cost of travel is relatively inconsequential. And we know that surprisingly, even your larger resort parks that are destinations, 80% of those guests still come from 150 miles or less to any given park. So people don't actually travel that far and that much in an RV.
Yeah, I think I'm not worried about the state parks, national parks proximity. I'm not worried about the ocean front. I'm not worried about Myrtle Beach. I'm not worried about Pigeon Forge, right? But I don't know what the percentage is, and maybe you know this better than I do, Robert, with your acquisitions and all the things that you're doing over there. But what percentage of parks is actually not within 150 miles of a major city to be able to pivot like that and pull in transients? Because a lot of people have switched to long-term, but a lot more people probably haven't yet.
Mm-hmm. There's not, for our region, I'll just take the Southeast because that's where the focus is. There's not that many, actually, right? There's not that many places in the Southeast that if you draw 200 mile circumference around, you're not in a tertiary market. There are places, but there's not that many. And that's frankly why we love the Southeast. There's a high population density per per state, per region, etc. We have amazing climate as compared to like national averages. So we have the most number of days with the largest region, and we have a lot of population density. So I don't know the exact number off the hand, but there's not very many places that fall into that category.
Does it lend itself, though, more to, if you're targeting these cities, does it lend itself more towards success in cabins, glamping versus RV for transients?
They're two completely separate markets. I mean,
Yes.
they're really a different customer. So I don't think, comparing the two and understanding it. I mean, glamping continues, looking at just the glamping numbers, and percentages and growth in the industry, it continues to grow inordinately, right? For 4 years in a row, I think it had close to triple-digit growth. And that's where, and whenever we look at a park or a resort, if they don't have glamping, we always recommend glamping. So I think glamping continues to also be the alternative to hotel as people find it and discover it. But again, I think it's a very different and insulated market. And if you also look at, CoStar released the report a month or so ago. I don't remember the exact date, the forecast for 2026. And, their guidance in essence was RevPAR was flat. I think it was 0.5% up. Now that includes the lift from World Cup, and that includes the lift from expected travel for Route 66 and America 250. So that in essence means, guidance is down, for the hotel world anyway. But further, bifurcating it, they continue to say that the luxury segment outperforms the economy segment. And we've seen the same exact thing in the outdoor hospitality industry. So, the outdoor hospitality industry will go through some of these same trials and tribulations, over the next year. It's the thing we've talked about inordinately. But the glamping, I think, falls into that more luxury segment. And in some cases is more cost effective than a hotel, but you also get a better, experience. So I just think it's a very different topic.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a different market. I was just asking if you draw the 200-mile circle around your property, right? And you're a campground that also has some cabin rentals or glamping units. You're obviously marketing those differently, just like you're marketing RVs differently. Then you reach out to those cities, and that's a different guest, of course, different ad campaign, different marketing, different strategy. But do you lean more into that? Do you maybe consider maybe I want to buy an extra cabin or something like that?
Personally, I don't. I'm not going to make, I'm not going to make a structural CapEx decision based off of a couple months different trends.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. If it continues, I mean, right? Yeah. Like if it goes into next year.
The only reason why you buy an extra cabin is if your particular property's business case said so. I wouldn't buy it for a market trend, a national number. I would only put the capital outlay if my individual property business case dictated that I had an ROI.
All right. So to the people who are listening here who are not as sophisticated with all the large teams like you are, Mike and Robert, if you're looking at a radius of 200 miles, let's just pretend you're positioned in the southeast, just for sake of argument, because we were already talking about that. Is it just as simple as switching the language and wording on your marketing campaigns, or is there something else these owners should be doing to prepare for the shift from long-term to transient, or whatever we want to talk about for 2026 summer camping season?
I don't. It's not like a.
I know it's not a one-size-fits-all, right? Like,
or even a one-session question.
No. Are there three top things that you can imagine that someone should not necessarily do, but assess at their property or look at or study the market or some way to prepare? Give them a starting point, because I think that so many people don't have revenue managers, right?
Yeah, number one is you call Jeff from Campground, Strategy to consult with you. Number 2 and 3 is you hire Robert or me to manage your campground.
There you
go. When I teach revenue management, wherever it is, at the Ojai National Conference or these state conferences or with CampSpot, everything always starts with the same thing, which is you have to start at your 30,000 foot view and look at your business, right? And understand, where am I down? What is my pace? What are my trends? Like, if you're not looking at your numbers, then you don't know, right? I always use this terrible analogy with my team. I probably shouldn't use it on this call. But you know, if you think about diet, right? Oh, am I fat? Well, how fat am I? Do I want to lose 20 pounds? Do I want to be healthier? Do I want to exercise? But you first have to start with the acknowledgement of, yes, I might be fat. And then understand the why, right? Is it calorie intake? Is it diet? Is it exercise? And so, you know, your campground, for those folks that are in the Southeast, like you just asked, you know, if you don't have a revenue manager, you still have some version of reporting in your software that can tell you, yes, I am up or down versus last year. Yes, it's either long-term or transient. Yes, it's either occupancy or rate. Yes, it's, you know, whatever mix it might be. And then you start the deep dive of understanding why, right? And, you know, are there trends that are different? And then, you know, once you understand your why and what, you can talk about the how, you know, which is crafting a strategy to fix it. And sometimes it isn't as simple as marketing. Sometimes it's sales and prospecting. You know, so I think that's the big picture, holistic, you know, view. And we have Ojai Connect in 2 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks. Are you going, Jeff?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll actually be facilitating a session on revenue generation, and Rock will also be doing a sister session from the water on this exact topic, right? Which is, you know, how do you know, drive revenue? Is it ancillary? Is it site revenue? Is it all of the above? But, you know, those that don't start with the why question are doomed to fail. So that's what I would start with.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping you or someone would say, is start with the data, is dig into the spreadsheets, the financials, because all these PMS softwares have it, right? Some better than others, but they all have that.
Yeah. Brian, like Mike was saying, you have to look internal first or look in the mirror.
Recognize you have a problem. Yeah, you're not wrong about that. Like, we were at the Wisconsin conference and we had so many people. We were talking about a product we haven't released yet, and I'm not here to pitch myself, so I'm going to be intentionally vague. But we had a product that would tell people more about the revenue that they were accidentally losing. And the amount of people at our booth who just said, I don't need that, I don't want to know, was interesting to me. They haven't admitted they're fat yet, if that makes sense. I'm going to use Mike's analogy.
We always want to look at marketing and revenue and expenses in the P&L and find the easiest, obvious answer. A lot of times it's not, right? Sometimes it's the wrong person answering the phone. Sometimes it's a dirty park, right? Sometimes it's just poor upkeep, like it's irrelevant to what the market's doing. Even if the market was phenomenal, you're still going to be hurting because you've got some type of hurdle or choke point in the process or the people or the property that's just negating any type of potential that's coming in on the revenue side of it. So I think the easy thing that we all want to do is look at, well, what's the marketing data, what's the visits, etc. A lot of times it's probably a little bit more closer to home, the problem that needs to be addressed, than we want to admit.
Well, and to your point, Robert, you just said it, whether we're downturn or upturn, you know, you couple that with the question that Brian just said, which is a lot of people said, I don't need that, right? You know, there's so much low hanging, like how many properties do a P&L review? It amazes me that you don't do a monthly P&L review, which is the simplest thing to kind of say, where are my expenses? Where are my holes? You know, how many properties are doing the monthly revenue review? So to Brian's point, regardless if you're up or down, you know, the starting point, you know, I like your looking in the mirror better than my, are you fat? Although the are you fat really cuts to the heart, you know, the heart of the matter. But, you know,
it's already over, man. Like every conference, what would Mike Harrison say? That's what we're going to, he would ask you if you're fat.
So I had a question. Stacy, what does your company do, and could it help people with this?
Yeah, so I'm curious. Of course, the data is really important to look at, and also walking through as a camper, I think, is really important, viewing properties in the eyes of what your guests are seeing. And that's one way that our company can help. So Set Your Sights originally was founded with the idea of getting rid of the cash box. So cash box management for those parks that were still managing their occupancy with cash box, we're helping with the mobile payment side of that. We have real-time availability of walk-ups. So we can help with those sites. I mean, I've done a tour now from Nebraska, Oregon, California. I'm in Arizona right now, headed to New Mexico, and around this big loop around the western side of the country. And people want same day before sites. And so that can help bring, I know we all want to secure our reservations 6 months to a year in advance and settle in, but that's just not the way of of the world. And I think it's important to be able to accommodate campers that just need to get off the road and find your park. One way to do that, as well as talking to LLMs. What does Claude, what does ChatGPT know about your park? Does it even know about your park? Because that's where people are actually researching how to research their trips now on these visits. So are the LLMs trained to bring you up in search results to actually make sure you are part of it instead of just Google anymore? Because we know that Google search count is down significantly because people are searching and finding for us in more impactful ways. So that's just some suggestions I would have is how are we accommodating those campers who don't want to plan 6 months in advance? They want to come in, it's a nice weekend. So let's find those spots and pick your parks. And also, how are we using LLMs to help us with that?
So how does your company work with a property management system, or is it one? Is I think my first question is.
Yeah, so presently we stand alone with our parks. We're able to integrate with existing ones out there as well. We install QR code signs at campsites and help those payments so you don't have to be open 24/7. You don't have to do check-in in the office. So you don't have to use staff to manage those pieces of it. You can put staff in other places for resource management as well. So we can stand alone or we can integrate. We can do both.
Anybody else have any questions for Stacy? I mean, I can keep asking, but
You're the tech guy. Go for it.
you want me to go for it? Oh, that wasn't the answer. Nobody likes hearing me talk. I'm curious, Stacy. So, all right. So, contactless check-in at different sites, QR codes. How does the guest, like, is this mostly a pitch toward like a state park, provincial park, county park, or is this something that you like? Because I think, and I don't operate CampSpot or NewBook on a day-to-day basis because I don't have my own campground, or an example, ResNext, any of that, a reservation system, right? How does this become necessary on top of a piece of software like that? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think there's certain software that has blackout periods for reservations. I had that experience at a big name in California. They blacked out their reservation system for same day of, and so I had to call. Well, we know that campers don't necessarily want to call a park to see if there's occupancy and then pay over the phone. They want to be able to just get the site, and so that's where we can come in to help with that for the software systems that require the blackout periods for reservation. So that is generally for public parks, county parks, but we do also see private campgrounds that are operating in that way as well, and to call for availability. So if that's a transition that parks are wanting to make, we can help out with that.
Yeah, so this is an interesting conversation. I'm not going to ask you to say the name, but I'm going to say I think KOA still does that at a certain cutoff point in the day where they require you to stop taking reservations. Do you do that, Mike or Robert, at your properties for like, I understand housekeeping for cabins. That makes sense to me, but for RV sites?
We don't. So I just did the math a couple of days ago, right? With our portfolio at any given night with the current vacancy that we have on used sites, right? That's about $50,000 a day of unused sites that sit there. And so,
Per park or for your portfolio?
For the portfolio, right?
Okay.
So $50,000 in revenue per night with the average occupancy they're at. And not that these parks are not performing, just to say that in general, there's usually a significant number of unused sites every night, right? And so the task to the team and the emphasis of the team is like, hey guys, if we're just basically letting $50,000 a night go, right? Let's start to dig into and tackle that. So, cutting off reservations seems not smart to me.
No.
It's an RV site. Pull in, plug in, go. We find the choke point is the phone call itself. People can book online. We found, right, still actually want to make a phone call and still enjoy that phone call process. So they want to know who's going to be at the desk to check them in. So then, moving your hours of operation or making sure there's a human answering the phone as late as possible into the day is one of those steps that we've taken to make sure that we're capitalizing on that choke point of reservation through phone.
It's interesting. What Robert says is true. And what I would also say is, for a property like Verde Ranch, we look at the demographic mix, and we are almost like perfectly 20% baby boomer, 20% Gen X, 20% millennial, 20% Gen Z, 20% Gen Alpha, right? It's crazy. And so you have to be able to accommodate all of their needs. And the millennial, Gen Z, they don't want to talk to anyone, right? They just want to book, but the baby boomer, Gen X, sure they do. But to Robert's point and your question, no, we don't why would you shut down reservations, and stop taking them? I mean, why would you want to leave revenue on the table? And in today's day and age, if you don't have digital check-in, either for your lodging or for your RVs, you're going to get left behind, right? You need somebody at 10 o'clock at night pulling off the highway. They need to be able to look online, book your property, and then be able to pull into the site without having to talk to somebody or see anybody. Whether that's a cabin or whether that's an RV spot. If you're not, then they're going to look somebody else up again. So, almost all the PMSs really have that technology now. It's just a question of the campground really wants to activate and utilize it. So that's how I would answer that question. Please don't ever shut off your availability, unless you're oversold by 3. Use the technology to really enhance the experience.
So, Stacy, does what you're using allow to ship out a gate code and a key code for a cabin? Because one of my partners in Camp Strategy is adamant about he has hotel spaces where he doesn't have anybody on property. Everything is done through key codes and email. So I think that's a common thing.
Yeah, I think people expect that, especially, with the advent of Airbnb being able to do that. Those folks are generally not on site. They expect to get a door code, a key code. It's very common to have. And so we have an integration with a lock company that allows us to do that as well. So it can be fully self-service at any time. I think the days should be gone of having my name on a piece of paper taped to a front door is the check-in process. It's a little uncomfortable continually seeing that on the road as we're out. And so, and just thinking about paying for systems and then either not using or choosing not to use it and having vacancy on a piece of paper and going in. And as soon as you print something, your availability is done for. That's not real time, right? So we want to make sure that the campground sites are accessible at any time. Technology can solve the problem, as Mike mentioned.
What is the state of this in CampSpot and NewBook? And I'm just picking these two because Robert, you use NewBook and Mike, you use CampSpot, right? What's the state of the actual, because I don't think I have a full grasp of what's possible now for digital check-in. Neither of you guys use it, or Mike, do you use it? Or
Somebody's looking the answer.
Your question is, what's the state of digital check-in?
Yeah, what does CampSpot have as a feature set for that? And then what does, if Robert, what does NewBook have?
Well, I don't know what you mean by feature set. You can certainly check in online and get your, gate code and your site number ahead of time. And
yeah, that's what I mean. Without seeing a human being, or can you go straight to your site?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I'd be willing to bet that the majority of CampSpot users who use their software probably aren't aware that feature. It's not one of the most highly touted features, I think, at a trade show.
Well,
my guess.
It's not necessarily like a Marriott where you get your mobile key and check in online. It's not the same thing. It isn't necessarily if somebody isn't aware of CampSpot or NewBook or Staylist or Set Your Sites can do it or not. It's are they willing to, because there's other, if you have a gate, you certainly have to have a gate system that integrates with your PMS, right? If you have a cabin, you got to have a digital lock that integrates with the PMS. And so it's really up to the owner and the property manager of how they're going to handle it more than the PMS. All the PMSs basically have the same functionality at this point. It's more up to the operator. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I think we're getting back into a lot of the arguments we've had here that we keep equating a hotel guest to an RV guest.
Okay.
Just besides being humans, right? That's the correlation. But if we start saying, yeah, when I go to a hotel, I love the digital. I love to do that, right? But when I show up to a campground, I've got a 45-foot rig and a another 25-foot trailer behind it. I have all this stuff. I don't just roll in there and just presume that I know what I'm doing and get to flow into the campground just simply because I've checked in online. I'm probably still going to stop at the office and stick my head around the corner and see what that site looks like and get a little bit of better feel of the area before I just roll in there. And so I think we're always, I love automation. I love getting it cleaner, faster, adapting to different guest preferences, different generational preferences. That's great. But when we start to say, hey, well, a hotel does this, so we should do that, we're probably going to miss the mark in a big way somewhere.
Yeah, Robert.
I think that's just kind of part of the argument that I'd remind.
Yeah, I'm with you. I guess maybe I should have framed my question set better. I was looking for more like the gap between the check-in and after the office is closed. How do we handle that? Sorry, I should have.
Yeah, no, well, no, I think your question is good. It's just that the tech's all there. I just don't think that people want it as much as we presume that they want it.
Right.
Depends on the demographic.
Yeah, we escort guests that arrive. After hours guests, we still have security on premise and they escort. What we're looking at is to try to speed up the process and get them to their site as quickly as possible so that they can relax and then have one more step where they may have to come into the store, because hopefully by then they're relaxed and they'll come to the store and maybe shop more than they would have if they come in right off the road. So we want to try to get them back in the store in a more relaxed atmosphere. Whether that's going to work to increase store sales or food sales, I don't know, but that's kind of how we're looking at using the technology, is just to get them to the site or the unit quicker.
I think not all campers are created equal and not all campgrounds are created equal, right? And so, if you ask this question at a glamping conference, right, at an AGA conference, the adoption and the usage would be 5 times higher than a campground, right?
Absolutely.
A property like Onera or Live Oak Lake or any of those, it's 100% digital adoption, right? Because they don't have a front desk, check-in, system. If you have a large resort, that's highly transient and not 55 plus, it'll be far lower than a 55 plus campground, right? It depends, right? But I think the technology, especially as I heard something the other day, right? Our kids, that are now 20, 25, 30, whatever, they've never known a world, without a digital phone, right? Their kids, the 1s, 2s, 3-year-olds, they're never going to know a world without AI. So, the digital adoption, while right now I don't have a statistic, but I have to imagine, industry-wide, it's probably 5%, right? It's low. If you look at it a year from now, it'll be 8%. If you look at it 2 years from now, it'll be 15%. It'll be no difference how, you go back 25 years. I remember when, a mobile web was a first thing with Marriott, and mobile was 3% of their usage versus desktop, and then it slowly just slowly pivoted where obviously mobile is now I think 60 or 70, close depending on the property. And so the digital footprint, and you've heard me say this all the time, right? AI or technology, it does not replace humans. It does not replace service, it enhances it. But you need to have the ability to evolve with the technology as our customer evolves and changes. So I think that's something to just consider.
Don't disagree with any of that. All right, what else we got to talk about, gentlemen? Anything else that's in the world or you're looking forward to for summer 2026, or anything in the industry you've heard that was insightful? Nothing? What have you been doing the last month? Working on your properties?
It's been a whirlwind. Pretty encouraged. Our our February numbers, and looks like March are going to be, I would say we're going to hit the highest revenue marks that we've hit since 22, 23 post COVID.
Nice.
So, I can't pinpoint yet exactly what the difference is or what the change is, but so that's just a data point that we're seeing right now. And it's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's to your point of, or maybe it was your point or Mike's point about the data. Like if you're coming in as a sophisticated operator like Unhitched or CRR Hospitality, or you're using somebody like Jeff at Camp Strategy, not to leave you out, Stacy, but just talking about a specific point. Opportunity to take a park that has been underperforming. Did I lose myself there?
Yeah.
You're back. You're good.
To take a park that hasn't done any of that revenue optimization or looked at the data or paid attention to their PMLs or done their marketing or even had a good website. So then you can, I'm not saying that's the reason you are, Robert, but just as an example of, you can sometimes 2, 3, 4x a park year over year just by implementing what an Unhitched or CRR would call foundational fundamentals.
Mm-hmm. A lot of those foundation fundamentals are not tech to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
I'm
just
not arguing they are.
Yeah. No,
I'm a tech guy, but I'm not blind to everything else, right? So.
No, but I think it goes back to I would tie it back to the looking in the mirror metaphor. If you haven't looked in the mirror and dealt with your body composition, right, going out and buying the nicest clothes doesn't necessarily change the end result, right? So for that metaphor maybe I'm taking that metaphor a little too far.
No, that's
buy a hat because I'm bald and I have my little second brain up here. Would a hat work for me?
So if we took over a couple properties here recently, right? Professionally managed. We didn't change that much. We just changed the way that we answer the phone. We changed the personality feel. We changed the hospitality side of it. We didn't do anything to the property. We didn't change the tech that much. And almost instantly, right, you see immediate results in the revenue. And of course, expenses are easy to control, but the revenue is the variable that you're always trying to figure out which knob to hit.
He's back.
Still losing people, or is that? I don't know if it's me or Robert was disappearing.
Well,
Yeah, you guys all disappeared. So it's a learning point for us all. Like, there are constraints in any business. So here's what I'm learning, right? There's a constraint in any business or businesses, and unless you fix that constraint, the most restrictive constraint, it doesn't really matter what you do with the rest of the business, because everything's going to eventually have to flow through that constraint. And so if your constraint can only produce at a 10% optimization, pick an arbitrary number, then your entire system operates at a 10% optimization. Even if you have components 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that you're killing it and nailing it, and they're perfectly optimized, you're always going to be producing at that lowest component. And so, and it might be as simple as how you answer the phone, or it might be as complex as needing a different PMS system, an entire, strategy. So I think that's what I'm learning and developing, what I'm excited about, just to start feels like starting to see behind the matrix here and see how these things all flow together. On the surface, maybe don't appear to be correlated with each other.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding what you're saying. So you have a luxury, beautiful RV resort, you have great marketing, you have an awesome PMS, you have really good groundskeeping and landscaping and amenities and everything else, but your 10% constraint is the person who answers the phone grumpy.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. You spent $100 million on something, and a $15 an hour work camper blew it.
Yep. And Robert, I think, your point with the mirror, I like, but I think a lot of the people don't know what they're looking for in the mirror when they look. And that's, what organizations like yours and Mike's and other management companies can come in and show them. And that's why you can operate their campground more efficiently and profitably than they can. And it's also where consultants like us come in
Yeah.
and can show them what to look for and what's keeping them from generating revenue. Just like you said, listen to we write scripts for people on the phone. They can vary, but you want to have something where if they're a new customer, you ask them, have you ever been here before? And if they say no, you say, well, let me check and see if we have availability. And then you go through the whole spiel of what you have and then come back and say, oh, yeah, we do have a site open, and you get all of that for only $90 instead of coming back on the phone and say, yeah, I got availability. It's $90.
A huge difference in that, right? It's like, 20 or 30 different words and different orders, but
Yeah.
the effect is so significant.
Yes.
It's just one-
And they're small things, but if you don't know them, you don't know them.
Well, and to your point about the mirror, we'll just keep running with that, right? It's the difference between you've looked at yourself in the mirror for 10 years, 20 years, whatever else, and you're seeing the same person and the same thing, and it's hard to see what you're not seeing. But if you have someone else stand next to you in the mirror, whether it's a guest leaving you a review or a management company or a camp strategy or somebody else, they're looking at you in the mirror for the first time. They're going to see things you haven't seen.
It's like
Well,
having grandchildren
I know
look at you and go, you're old.
Yeah, I know I'm fat, but I think, I mean, it's interesting like what you say, Brian. Excuse me. I'm on an organization with someone who's legendary, and they own a campground, and their website I don't think has been updated since they created it 20 years ago, and they're using like 98 DPI pictures, right? And that's not. And they have an AOL email address, which I think maybe Jeff has too.
I do, sir.
He does actually, yeah. He does have an
That's
AOL.
not my working address, but I have one.
But I think there's some of those things. But Robert mentioned earlier about you go in when you teach hospitality. So what Jeff says is important, right? The script is important, but what makes that difference is we're still in outdoor hospitality business, and I was speaking with Jeff a little bit earlier about some things about Arizona State, and I'm on the advisory board for the hospitality department now, trying to really infuse outdoor hospitality into the hospitality world. And they had asked us, what are you looking for, from your graduates, right? And we so often get caught up in the tactical or functional skills. Math and science, and we want to teach them the P&L, and we want to teach them that, great. I want the graduates coming with me with problem-solving skills. I want the graduates coming to me with emotional intelligence. I want the graduates coming to me with some strategic skills, because those things, not that they're not important, right? Yes, you need scripts and you need SOPs, but without heart and without a brain, they really don't make a difference. And so, Robert mentioned it, and I don't know that it's highlighted enough, which is, really that core character of either the company or the person is what makes the difference at the end of the day. That's what changes it from a 3.8 on Google to a 4.8, right? That's what drives that extra revenue. That's what drives the referral, is the human element, which is tough to replicate with AI. Really at the end of the day, is that human connection, that human touch, that relationship, that interaction. Those are the things that I've seen, that really make the difference, in the training is, you can do all those things that Jeff just described, but make sure you also train them to smile. Use Robert's mirror again. We did training in the hotel. You put the mirror at the front desk so that they can see themselves smiling when they're on the phone. And that sounds so silly, but that, small intricacy really makes a difference in how their voice and tone come across on the phone. If they smile when they talk. Hospitality cannot be, understated, which I know that sounds like a Captain Obvious statement, but so often forgotten about.
It is Captain Obvious, but everyone goes to some type of software. Let me buy something, right? Let me do something.
Or the cheapest available work camper they can find.
Right? Yeah. It's not going to fix the problem if you have crappy hospitality. It's phenomenal. It will make your business amazing. The right tech and the right software and the right stuff. if you fix the constraint. But if you haven't fixed the original constraint, you're just lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Good and better.
The human connection is never going to disappear from, especially outdoor hospitality.
No, but it's the way that we're leaning into it as a company is we're kind of taking the opposite approach. Like that's what I think we are selling. Part of our product is the antithesis and opposite of AI. We use a ton of it as a business, but I'm trying to keep as much of it out of the guest's experience as possible.
Well, I think that's the appropriate step, and that's coming from the AI guy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I think
well,
you can use technology to weave it into your property without putting it in the face of the guest, and that's where I think the real winners are going to come out of this space.
Yeah, you taught me that. So, thank you.
All right. Anything else? Let's spend the last couple minutes here. We'll go around and have everybody, if they want to ask each other a question. So, I don't know if we've done this on the show. I always explain it briefly, but so we'll just start with Jeff. Jeff, ask anybody you want a question. Robert, Mike, or Stacy, and then we'll do process of elimination. Get everybody a question. So, who would you like to ask a question to, Jeff?
Well, because Stacy was kind enough to show up, I want to learn a little bit more about her company and how they interface and what other attributes they bring to my campground to make me stronger.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we're coming from a camper perspective. So we actually had an experience where we wanted to be at a campground about 30 minutes away from our house. And we showed up to get a walk-up campsite. The site was available, but they said you can't have that campsite. You have to come back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and we're going to put your name on a list. And then you need to bring your rig back at 2 p.m. and we're going to draw your name out of a hat to see if you get one of our walk-up sites. And so that was about 5 years ago. And we said, if we're going to keep camping year round.
Oh, we have you back, I think.
There
This
you go.
is
We're
fun
back.
today.
Yep.
Everybody's disappearing.
Yeah. If we're going to keep camping year round, we just can't keep up with this friction and the challenges of this style of camping. And so we set out to create Set Your Sites. My husband's an electrical engineer and my background is in sales and marketing and operations. And so we thought, let's see what we can do to affect change for campers and just simplify how to access great places. And so we started with the cash box alternative, the walk-up QR code scan to pay, and then have since paired that with our reservation system. And so we're showing live availability of walk-up and reservations. To us, sites are just sites. You can walk up to them, you can reserve them ahead of time, you can just get sites and you can pay and move on with your day and get to camping faster. And so that's the heart of our company, is just getting to camping faster, making more of those memories. So we don't have to think the memory of our son's 7th birthday was that we got our name drawn of a hat instead of like actually his birthday celebration at the campground. So that's what we're doing in general. We're working towards how can we, and I agree, we don't want technology in the forefront, getting in people's faces. We want it in the background, modernizing operations, bringing self-service where it needs to be so the humans can do that important human work. Robert, like you're talking about, absolutely. We want people around. From the customer discovery that we've done is that campers want to know that humans are around in case they need them. They want to have that face. They want to know if they have a place to go, if they have a question, but they don't necessarily want the person popping out like wherever they are, checking on them to make sure that they're following the millions of rules. And campground operators don't want to be police. So we're just like learning more about this interaction between campers and campgrounds and what's that right mix of self-service. So that's what we're working with our parks to do. And so we serve over 1,300 campsites in 6 states presently. And so we're continuing to expand as we grow year over year.
So the goal is to use enough tech to allow your team to have enough time to pop out and have, and just surprise, is there anything you need that would help your stay be better?
Yeah, just the people work. Let's let the people do the people work, and let's let the systems and the tech that has evolved significantly do that for us.
Yeah, somewhere along the way, we got stuck behind computers and we stopped doing hospitality.
Hmm.
And I think that's where the back end operations of tech is going to allow us to get back to hospitality, I hope. Stacy, your turn. Ask a question to anybody you'd like, Mike, Jeff, or Robert.
If anybody wants to take this, from what I've heard from campground operators, it's harder to find work campers. Are work campers a part of the parks that you operate? And is that more of a challenge? Like, how are you maybe working around or changing the business style if work campers are a part of your organization?
You pick, Robert or Mike. Well, I guess Jeff has a campground too. Sorry.
I do.
You got to pick, Stacy.
Okay. I guess, Robert, I'll just go with you.
Sure. Great question. Yep, we use work campers quite a bit in all the parks. We believe it's an important part of the hospitality side of it, because if you work where you live or you live where you work, you're probably going to take better care of both. I think that was question number one of it. So yes, we use them extensively throughout the system. We've had to figure out the legalities and make sure it's done the right way. So our work camper program, is not quite as loose as an individual mom and pop work camper where you're simply trading the site rent and whatnot. They are actually on a payroll and reporting, and all of the legality employment side of it we've had to overcome, which does pose a certain barrier to entry to certain work campers who just adamantly don't want to be part of that system, which is okay. But that is something that we do. And then, yeah, finding them hasn't been that big of a challenge for us lately. Finding property managers is a challenge. I wouldn't call it a choke point right now. That is a hurdle. That's probably the staffing challenge that we find most difficult. And it's also an extremely, extremely important role that we have to vet very thoroughly. And it's a long interview process for us at the property manager or resort manager level. But that's probably where we're seeing most difficult staffing.
All right, Robert, Jeff, or Mike?
Let's go with I'm gonna go with Mike. Sure. Mike, I don't know if I've got a good question lined up for you yet. Let's go with if you're brainstorming and thinking about, we'll call it a disruption party, thinking about what could disrupt the industry the most, what comes to the top of your mind? Positive or negative disruption?
I will have two answers to that. I think one is the evolution of not just AI, but the digital world. And it's moving so fast. It reminds me of the internet boom and, or the Wi-Fi boom and, the early 2000s and, what do you do? And what do you install? What's Cat 5? Oh, should I install it now? And so, there's so much information that changes every day. AI is going to start being able to book directly in the LLM. No, it's not. Now they're going to partner with OTAs, and the OTA will be, well, let's see. Well, Google, they're going to die. Well, are they? And so, no one has all the answers or the right answers, and it's continuing to change, and it changes every day, right? And this will be instrumentally impactful to our industry to see how it goes and who's left behind and who evolves and what's the right evolution. To me, that's one. The second is, if you looked at all the surveys year over year from OHI, and there's a particular question on there about corporate-owned campgrounds and non-corporate owned campgrounds, and every single year for the past 5 years, corporate-owned campgrounds continues to grow. Right, it's a much higher percentage. I don't want to misspeak, but I think it was less than 10% like 5 years ago, and now I think it's close to 30. And I think that's only going to change. And again, it reminds me of the hotel industry 25, 30 years ago. I remember when Residence Inn first came in and Promise bought the brand, blah, blah, blah. And, how many motels do you see now? Right. Or what happened with Home Depot and Lowe's, in the neighborhood hardware stores. And so I think what's already occurring and will continue to occur, and there's, negative and positive sentiment on both sides, is the inculcation of more corporate owned properties and what happens to the mom and pops. And so, but the evolution of our industry has to happen. And unfortunately, some of the mom and pops aren't evolving, fast enough, or won't, or don't know, or don't have a mirror. And so, I think that will be, we'll look back in 10 years from now and, and look at the data, where we are in 10 years and where we are now, and our industry will be completely different. If you think of 5 or 6 years ago, what the tools were, what the sophistication was, where it is now. I mean, it's inordinately different. And so I think that disruption will continue to happen.
All right, Mike, last but not least to Jeff.
Jeffy, what are you working on?
What am I working on? Right now, just doing some performance.
Like right now you're doing performance, you're not even paying attention?
Well, I always have a second screen up. So,
yeah, me too.
But one of the things I'm trying to do in my, my spare time and for fun is I'm trying to gather information from RVIA, the manufacturers, the dealers, and the campground industry, and trying to put together some kind of relative statistic that shows where we are on the demand scale for RV sites going forward. Have we met the demand, or are we overcooking the demand a little bit? If we do that, I can see some of the older sites becoming like older hotels where no matter what you do, they may not survive. You're going to have to rebuild them to get them back into the market.
Well, to me, the single biggest factor isn't necessarily the demand, it's the supply, right?
Yeah.
When I was working on a project 3 or 4 years ago, I reached out to you, I reached out to Ojai, I reached out to Scott, I reached out to CampSpot. No one could answer me on, what's the supply growth, year, because there's no data. And right. So, how do you know how many new campsites are?
Right. And that's what I'm working on, is trying to, and I'll tell you, finding good data is probably the tough, even with AI and everything available.
Yeah,
it's not all public.
To me, demand isn't necessarily down as much as now there's more sites to fill.
Yes.
All those properties that were built, developed, pro-formed in 2021, 23 have opened in 24, 25, and 26.
Yes.
But how many?
Right. And are we keeping up with sales of units to keep that, to fill up that new supply? And nobody tracks the used market, which those units, what I'm trying to do is figure out the life expectancy of a used unit and how long it stays in the market, because we can't base everything on the new.
It would be interesting data.
Yeah. Any way you can help me there, Brian, would be awesome.
I don't know anything about data.
But the dealer networks are tougher because they obviously protect their information and they don't want to let it out. So it's been very tough to get the sales figures, other than like public companies like Camping World and that report, but they give you the basic, not the in-depth.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about it on this show. We're going to talk about it later with Scott on Outwired, and then we got to wrap up here real quick.
Okay.
But the SSI retail numbers down 25% in Class A's, 18% in fifth wheels, 15% overall. We're interesting. I know that's not what we're talking about. But all right, let's wrap up the show.
All right.
We will, Mike, before you jump off, say where they can find more information about CRR Hospitality. And
Sure. www.crrhospitality.com. Love to chat. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for joining us,
Bye,
Mike.
Mike.
Robert, where can they learn more about Unhitched RV and everything you're doing?
Yep. Unhitchedrv.com or Unhitched MGMT Management. Unhitchedmgmt.com.
Stacy, where can they learn more about Set Your Sights?
Yeah, you can find us at www.setyoursItes.com or at Set Your Sights Inc. on Instagram.
Thank you for joining us, Stacy. I appreciate it. And last but not least, Jeff, where can they find out more about Camp Strategy?
Camp Strategy, you can go to our website, campstrategy.com, or Jeff at campstrategy.com. No
Awesome.
ALL in there.
Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Hopefully everybody watching here has learned something new today. I know I have. Whenever I email, but my takeaway from the show is whenever I email Robert about tech, I'm going to sign up for a new AOL.com email address and do it from there. And then everything will be balanced and all will be right with the world. So thank you guys for joining us for another episode. If you're not sick and tired of hearing of me and Scott Barr will be live on Outwired in about 45 minutes or so. Other than that, take care. We'll see you next week. Bye.
All right. Bye.